Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm super glad you're here. So the theme of today's video is going to be from my book, which is this really cool thing that I've collected over many years of some scientific papers and government documents. But I want to think about the theme of trust the science. Well, usually we should only trust people or institutions that have a history of telling the truth. It turns out that Pfizer owns the world record for the biggest lawsuit payout on the planet. So keep that in mind. And I want to look at first this document. We have to trust the science, that's what we're told. So here's a little bit about the mindset of some of these scientists that I want to share with you. So this is a document about the rules and regulations on vaccines from the Food and Drug Administration, 1984. Yeah, Department of Health and Human Services. And in this document, there's a lot of deregulation going on. They're taking some of the rules and restrictions for pharmaceutical companies to develop vaccines in the United States. They're stripping away some of those regulations to make things go more efficient for the drug companies to produce the vaccine, which sounds reasonably logical and valid to do. However, keep this in mind. Deregulation never means more safe, especially when it comes to pharmaceuticals. That allows them to cut the corners, so to speak, without actually breaking any rules at that point, because the regulations have been stripped. So deregulation never makes drugs more safe, ever. So this document was a long-winded document about deregulation for MMR vaccines, pertussis vaccines, and other vaccines that were common in 1984. And I want you to pay attention to this last statement. I'm just going to read one little bit out of that paper. It says, any possible doubts, whether or not well-founded, about the safety of the vaccine cannot be allowed to exist. In the view of the need to assure that the vaccine will continue to be used to the maximum extent consistent with the nation's public health objectives. Accordingly, because of the importance of the vaccine and of maintaining public confidence in the immunization program that depends on it, good cause exists to issue these amendments as a final rule effective immediately. So they make these amendments to the regulations, which is a deregulatory act, removal of restrictions, and then they have this attitude, which is that all possible doubts, even if they're well-founded, even if they're scientifically based, doubts about the safety of the vaccine cannot be allowed to exist. That is the mindset of the FDA in 1984. I want you to consider the mindset of the FDA today and see, maybe they've repented, or maybe they're still the same. Most likely, you already know the answer. So in addition to that, I want to read a paper, and I'll look at this another paper in a little bit different. This one's in a scientific journal. But I want us to consider this. Do scientists lie? Well, it sounded in that document from the FDA that they were promoting dishonesty by saying we cannot allow any doubt to exist. Snuff out all the doubts for the efficacy of the vaccine, even if they're well-founded. So, do scientists lie? Can they lie? Well, yes, you can buy a scientist just as easy as you can buy a politician. So here, this other study that I have is a long-winded meta-analysis. It's called The Relation of Study Quality, Concordance, Take-Home Message, Funding, and Impact of Studies of Influenza Vaccines, a Systematic Review. So this is a team of researchers that looked at 259 studies on the efficacy of flu vaccines. And they were looking for specifically what's the conclusions, and do the conclusions match what data is presented, and is there any relation to conclusions, concordance with data, and the funding of that study. So this is so interesting because I want to read a little bit out of this paper for you. It says, the studies that are important to medicine are not being read by doctors. It says here, given the pressures of everyday work, the time available for reading a scientific article might be as little as 22 minutes. So the physician doesn't get to see these little details. Basically, they get to read the conclusions. And when you present data in a paper, you present it plainly and without any qualifiers or extrapolations. You just say, this is what was found. Then in the conclusions, you're allowed to draw conclusions where you extrapolate and you connect the dots and you add to the conclusion and you claim things. That's when you get to make claims. What does your data mean? That's what the conclusions are. This paper found that 70% of the studies, so 259 studies, 70% of them reported favorable conclusions to the flu vaccine. So they're saying 70% of these studies show positive take-home message, positive conclusions drawn, whereas only 18% showed concordance between the data reported and the study conclusions. Well, so what does that really mean? Well, it means that someone is lying. If 70% of studies showed positive results, then the concordance should also be 100% because 70% have positive conclusions, therefore 70% should have positive results, but that's not the case. In fact, only 18, less than 20%, less than a quarter of these studies had conclusions that actually matched the data. So that means that we are seeing embellishment, and maybe even flat out lies, altering the truth. What's interesting is that the connection between who funded it is this. Most studies were carried out on healthier general populations and were government financed. You don't have to trust the government. I'm proving it to you. So let's look at this. This actually has a little bit of some excerpts. So here is a study that looks like it was done in Japan. It says the study was conducted over 1 year. Conclusions support recommendation of annual vaccination. Authors note that vaccine effectiveness has been shown even if it was possibly administered too late. Authors also state that the effectiveness is shown for influenza-related ARI only and not influenza. They recommend vaccination for patients with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This means recommending vaccines, although it is not effective against influenza and acute exacerbations. Hang on, let me read that again. This means recommending vaccines, although it is not effective against influenza and acute exacerbations. So they recommend getting the flu shot, even though it shows no efficacy. That's an example of one of the papers. So here's one that I think has a flat-out lie. In the results sections, it says there's no difference among the vaccinated and control group. And then it says, in conclusion, influenza vaccine is effective in preventing serologically proven influenza infection in young, healthy, hospital-based healthcare professionals, so nurses and doctors, and may reduce cumulative days of illness and absence. But it says there's no difference among the vaccinated and the control group. And yet they're saying it might reduce the symptoms. Wait a minute, that sounds like something we've heard. Yeah, I hope you're connecting the dots with me here. Clinical outcomes are not significantly affected by vaccination, i.e. it does not work. Although their conclusions are very favorable of the vaccine, there is no evidence to suggest that it protects you from the flu. It doesn't stop transmission, it doesn't stop infection. All it does is maybe shorten the length of the symptoms. So the flu vaccine, we know, in 2019, before the flu was eradicated, the flu vaccine efficacy was about 26%. Is that really enough? Can't you just have the flu if you are going to get it? Just be sick for a week? I don't understand the point of getting the flu shot or any other shot. Especially for a respiratory disease. I'll make another video. I'm getting a little high on time. I don't want to keep you here all day. But look, here's my paper on the efficacy of pertussis vaccines. Whooping cough is pertussis. And I also have these papers. Regarding how getting the flu shot can affect subsequent infections. I hope you're able to read that. I know it went kind of fast. Then I also have papers about coronavirus vaccines. Isn't that interesting? I've got a lot of papers I'd like to look at. Okay, so I've done a little bit of research here. I'm telling you guys, we can look at the past to find out about today. And in 1984, they said we should snuff out all doubts about vaccines. And that is not science, right? Isn't science embracing the doubt and proving things? So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was a little rambly and my thoughts are a little scattered, but I just wanted to share that little bit, and there'll be more to come. Give me a like if you like it. You know I like the likes. Hey, feel free to share this on Facebook, because I don't have Facebook, and that'd be cool. Have a great day.